Hi, this is Morley, and this is the M-Wire. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday and you enjoyed it with the ones you love. But I'm going to get into a subject on a more somber note, which is the impending conflict between the Ukraine and Russia. This, in my opinion, is a very underreported story, and to some of you who have commented to that effect, thank you so much. I'm clearly not alone in my opinion. A lot of people are watching this story, and quite frankly, the mainstream media here in the US couldn't conceivably care less about it. So I'm more than happy to bring you the details of what is currently going on in Russia and the Ukraine as of recent. The other day I reported that Russia is in all likelihood going to attack the Ukraine in January sometime, late January. And I found an article from a very reliable source that substantiates that. This article is from the Military Times, and as you can see from the headline, the Ukraine Defense Intelligence is of this opinion as well. They are quite confident that Russia is going to attack in late January. You might be thinking, well, why would you tell your enemy when you're going to attack? Well, Russia's military is one of the most formidable on the planet. They know that. They have state-of-the-art weapons, as we're going to see in this video here. What they're planning to equip certain things with will somewhat shock you, but they're obviously very confident in their military. That's why they almost don't mind divulging to the entire world when they plan to attack, because that's just part of their swagger, if you will. Now, from a strategic standpoint, you might be asking, well, why would you attack in the dead of winter? Now, Russian winters are very harsh. If we go back to World War II, when the Third Reich was fighting the Russians, the Third Reich lost on that front largely because they were ill-equipped to deal with Russian winter. The Russians had warm winter clothing to wear. Hitler did not equip his panzer units and any SS and anyone who was fighting the Russians with warm winter clothing, so they simply succumbed to the elements and froze to death. So that's one of the reasons why the Third Reich was defeated, in addition to obviously fighting a war on two fronts. But Russians are hardy people, and winter doesn't really faze them because, let's face it, they're well used to very cold winters. But now I'm going to get into not one but two articles actually that really give good insight as to what's exactly happening between Russia and the Ukraine. As I said, this is a very underreported story. The Military Times is a reliable publication. I trust the information I'm getting here. But folks, if you stick with me through this video, what Russia is potentially planning to do will somewhat shock you. Without further ado, let's just dive right into this. Russia has more than 92,000 troops amassed around Ukraine's borders and is preparing for an attack by the end of January or beginning of February, the head of Ukraine's defense intelligence told Military Times. Such an attack would likely involve airstrikes, artillery, and armor attacks, followed by airborne assaults in the east, amphibious assaults in Odessa and Mariupol, and a smaller incursion through neighboring Belarus, Ukrainian Brigadier General Krylo Budanov told Military Times Saturday morning in an exclusive interview. So obviously Ukraine their intelligence is wise to what Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation have planned for the end of January. They are quite confident that this attack is indeed going to take place. Russia's large-scale Zapad 21 military exercise earlier this year proved, for instance, that they can drop upwards of 3,500 airborne and special ops troops at once, he said. The attack Russia is preparing, said Budanov, would be far more devastating than anything before seen in the conflict that began in 2014 that has seen some 14,000 Ukrainians killed. Now, the other day I showed you video of Russian forces moving artillery and military vehicles into position. Now, this graphic illustrates exactly what that video showed if you take a look at this. The increases in personnel, tanks, and other military items in the bottom right-hand corner is all telling, folks. And there's the date there, which essentially compares and contrasts the number of troops that Russia had in position when they were threatening Ukraine with an invasion in the spring, as opposed to now. And you'll notice that all those numbers are larger than what they had in the spring. So this military buildup even exceeds that which they had in the spring, which tells me that Russia isn't playing around this time. They are very, very, very serious about carrying this out. But Russia is building capacity to do so, Budanov told Military Times, increasing troop levels and weapon systems in occupied Crimea, and staging systems like Iskander short-range ballistic missile systems and other weapons elsewhere near the border. And he scoffed at suggestions that the brutal weather conditions during that time of year would dissuade the Russians from attacking. As I said, folks, they're a very hardy people, and they are absolutely no stranger to very cold winters. It's no problem for us and the Russians, Budanov said, of fighting in the frigid weather. Any such attack, however, would first follow a series of psychological operations currently underway designed to destabilize Ukraine and undermine its ability to fight, said Budanov, speaking through an interpreter. They want to foment unrest through protests and meetings that show the people they are against the government, he said. So this is a psyop as much as it's a physical war, folks. In 2021, this is how wars are fought. I mean, they always have been to a certain degree. But things are certainly amped up with the, development of technology and whatnot. Now, I want to get into this other article here that I found interesting as well. And if anyone from the U.S. military, or particularly the Air Force, is watching this video, I want them to comment on this next part, because what I'm about to talk about here, I've never even so much as heard of. Perhaps somebody can lend me some insight as to whether or not these weapons are a real thing, or they could potentially be a real thing, because, like I say, this could be part of the PSYOP for all we know. Exclusive. Russia says its nuclear forces are combat ready amid fears of Ukraine invasion. Moscow's forces are being equipped with deadly flamethrower rockets capable of sending a ball of fire 4 miles ahead of troops to devastate defending forces. So this essentially sounds like a missile within a missile. I've never heard of any type of weapon that can fire a fireball ahead of its target 4 miles before the actual missile lands on its target and detonates. If there's anyone from the military that can comment on this and knows anything about this, it would be greatly appreciated. Russia's defense chief, Sergei Shoigu, has escalated fears of a Ukrainian invasion by ordering his commanders to make their nuclear forces combat ready. It followed U.S. warnings that Putin could order his tanks to roll into neighboring Ukraine within weeks after months of military muscle flexing against NATO. Moscow's forces are being equipped with deadly flamethrower rockets capable of sending a fireball 4 miles ahead of troops to devastate defending forces. On Wednesday, Shoigu told Russian military leaders their top priority must now be increasing their combat effectiveness, maintaining the combat readiness of nuclear forces, and strengthening the potential of non-nuclear deterrent forces. He told them this was in retaliation for growing NATO activity near the Russian borders in recent weeks, referring to claims U.S. long-range bombers had buzzed the country's borders. And he warned Russia will react by equipping the military with high-precision weapons, effective means of destruction, modern weapons and equipment. It is believed that Russia has put NATO and Ukraine commanders on a state of near permanent high alert regarding the possibility of an invasion deliberately. Yeah, as I've said a few times before, the Russian Federation is not at all enthralled with the prospect of the Ukraine joining NATO. I mean, the fact that the U.S. is flying bombers close to the border, that they could see that as a provocative action and all of a sudden decide to strike. I often wonder if there was an isolated incident, let's say there was a U.S. bomber flying by the Russian border, and the Russians decided to shoot it down. Do you think that the U.S. would actually do anything further physically other than threaten sanctions? Not under this leadership, I don't think so. But hey, time will tell. But like I say, this is an escalating situation. I will maintain that. This was both to lessen the impact of an actual invasion, but it has been long expected, and also to induce a sense of repetition, so he can take them by surprise when or if he uses to order the attack. In 2014, his troops annexed Crimea in a lightning operation with barely a shot fired, having paved the way with the anti-West propaganda for several years. This meant locals were less angered, in many cases openly, towards the presence of Russian forces when they arrived. During daily fighting along the Ukrainian border with Russia since 2014, around 13,000 people are believed to have been killed. It is believed Russian forces are keen to push back the front line further into Ukraine to garner nationalist support back home and strike a decisive victory for local Moscow-backed separatists. Another theory of Putin's battle plan is that he will risk all by sending troops in a pincer movement deep into Ukraine by rolling in from Crimea and Belarus. One Russia analyst told the Daily Mirror, the terrifying picture now emerging is that midwinter mass Russian forces would invade Ukraine through Belarus in the north and up through Crimea in the south, heading towards the capital of Kiev, an encirclement operation splitting the country in two. Folks, this situation is as real as it gets. You have to take it seriously. Who knows what the Russian Federation plans to do, but they are certainly beefing up their military even more than when they did in the spring, and this situation requires to be monitored for the next coming months or until Russia decides to back down, which I don't think is likely at this point. They are not playing this time. But thank you so much for coming along with me to this very important update on what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. Please remember to like, to comment, to share, and of course to subscribe. And until the next update, God bless.